Welcome to One on One with Colette Linden. Today we're with Matthew Scott, Ward 5 candidate. Hi, Matthew.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. Now everyone does know Matthew. Obviously, you've been sitting in council for the last 4 years, and congratulations on all of your success. I do want to point out that in 2018, on when you were at that time campaigning to become a councillor, that you did promise to be a little bit different from the regular council member, and I feel that you lived up to that. And how do you feel?
I absolutely, just like you said, when I was going door to door and campaigning, I was letting people know I was going to be their voice for Ward 5. And I feel that I have lived up to that. I've expressed the concerns of the residents of Ward 5 throughout the past 4 years. Anytime that somebody gave me a call and just wanted to say, hey, this is kind of my thoughts on it, I listen. And I make sure that even if it's something that I might not necessarily agree with, I listen, because I'm not always going to have the answers, but that's why I was elected, to represent the people. So when they call and let me know, or they came and let me know, or I ran into them even at the grocery store, I made sure to express those concerns and always bring up Ward 5's needs and wants.
That's a good point. I never really thought about that. If you're out shopping and stuff, and you must have a lot of candidate or constituents come up to you and ask you and question you, but it's good that you received that well. And then, so what type of issues did Ward 5 see since 2018 to up until now that you carried through, or that that you can tell us about?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big concerns that everybody seems to have in this city right now is speeding. So I know that was something that was constantly brought up by myself, and actually my counterpart, Councillor Gardy, we were constantly bringing up the speed issue, especially in Ward 5. We have a lot of more rural areas, people like to walk. Less dense, so generally when that happens, cars are speeding. So we wanted to make sure that we could slow people down. One thing I was happy to bring forward was getting all school areas turned into school zones, which prior to me was not actually the case. So very much surprising that all schools weren't already zoned as a school zone, but we were happy to do that. One thing that I'm still fighting for is Ward 5 doesn't really have a lot of city activities or city amenities. Technically, the twin pad is in Ward 4 when you look at the boundaries. So that actually means that Ward 5 doesn't have any indoor or outdoor rinks from the city. That was one thing I actually brought forward as a motion this term, brought it to the budget, and I was the only one to support reopening a rink in Ward 5, which was unfortunate, but that's something else that I would like to continue to push for. I think Ward 5 needs its representation. I think it needs amenities. We're geographically one of the larger wards, so we're very spread out, and we don't seem to get a whole lot happening in our end. And I understand there's a focus on downtown, but we pay taxes just as much as everybody else, and I think that we should get some sort of something to show for that. So
now, do you have a park in Ward 5 that you could see? I mean, there's plenty of outdoor rinks in this city that many of our youngsters use throughout the winter months, so it should be coming up shortly. Tell me, are there areas already in place that could easily accommodate that?
Absolutely. Mike Zook Memorial Park in Bayview. That was where the rink was the last time we had a rink in Ward 5, and that was where I actually proposed reopening it. They still have a rink shack there. It would need a little bit of work interior. The posts are still up for the lights. Everything's ready. It's basically good to go. It would probably take a little bit of work to bring it up to speed, and then just the annual operating costs. So it was perfect. It really was.
Yeah, I do know that park very well. Okay, just on that subject, so since 2018, has there been any issues that are maybe most recently that haven't been brought to fruition that you would like to carry on should you be reelected for the next term that you would like to bring back up?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few things that I actually wouldn't mind. So the rink being one of them. One thing that I've been trying to get done in the back end, trying to figure out all the details before I could get it really going, is an open data platform in the city. That would benefit more than just Ward 5. That would benefit everybody. And ideally, in my perfect world, we would be able to, we're collecting all this data at the city as it is. That should be available to the taxpayers.
Yes, it should.
It's taxpayer equipment, it's taxpayer paid employees. That should be out there and accessible. If you look at other northern communities, they offer really nice platforms. You don't have to get really in depth. I know that there's been some councillors that kind of say, well, with open data, it's more than just putting it out there. Well, not necessarily. Sudbury's, what they do is you can submit a request as a constituent. They can kind of triage it and figure out where they're going to get to it. But then they'll set out, here's your data set. This is basically the data set that was asked for. They don't do a lot of the aggregating and the collation of it, because what they'll do is It's the raw data. Let the end users, let the constituents, the people that have an interest in doing that sort of thing, let them handle it. Because chances are they'll be able to do things that maybe the city didn't think of, right? There's a curiosity out there, and I think that the will of the people would bring out some really good data sets. I think that's one thing I would like to see.
Okay.
And a little bit more of a pie in the sky thing, but similarly, is there's this idea of a municipally owned and operated broadband internet.
Tell me, I love this. Is a good conversation for you and I to have.
I've been talking to a few people about it, getting some history. There was a time when PUC actually was involved in something similar. They had the telecom wing of it, right? And that was something that was looked at back, I can't remember when that was, early to mid 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you look into it, there's a lot of cities and communities that have had great success providing their own internet service to the municipality. They run the lines, they provide jobs locally, and they still, on top of all of that, make money. So when the city can make an income from this, they can reduce, obviously, the taxes, or they can increase services. They provide local jobs. They'll be able to go areas, and this is close to heart because Ward 5 has areas that still don't have broadband internet.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to go into those areas that Bell might not be willing to, or that Shaw may not be willing to. So there's a lot of people, and this really opened up during COVID, that were basically trapped at home. And they couldn't do anything. They couldn't attend their virtual medical visits. They couldn't attend classes because their internet was just unreliable. So they'd end up having to drive in. Unfortunately, we don't have a library in the West End anymore, despite my best efforts. But that would have been a place that somebody could have done that. So there's a lot of things like that that I think really have potential. In my prodding around, it just didn't seem that this current council maybe had the appetite for it, but I'm hopeful that the new council, I can bring some of these ideas back.
Well, to me, broadband connectivity has been an issue. I'm going to see now for easily 15 years, and it's been discussed in rural Northern Ontario communities. And in the last few years, it's received more pickup from the provincial and the federal government. So now that we've got those other levels of government on board with this issue, now would be the time for the third level, being municipal, to gather that. They are asking for that data. They are asking for the information. So broadband connectivity is definitely, I would say, an excellent choice to run with. And I appreciate you doing that for the ward and just for our city itself. You know, get that out there. So congratulations on that. Revenue generator. I mean, obviously, that is another thing that you were very careful with your spending and how council spent their money. Tell me about a time, or tell us about a time where you really gave it your all. Maybe it didn't work in your favor or not, but there seemed to be a lot of shuffling of money and funds into different line items. Tell me about a time that stuck out most in the last 4 years. Well,
I think one that most people will realize, and it's fresh in our memory, is a lot to do with the downtown plaza, the Mill Market, and actually even the bus terminal. They all, I'm going to lump them together because they're geographically pretty close, and they all came up and they all went a little bit over what we were told. So that's a great example. Specifically at the downtown plaza, the last meeting where they asked for the final increase. It was broken down into different pots and where the funding had come from. And I had noticed that, roughly I think 5 million of that was intended for infrastructure money from higher levels of government, historically being used for roads. Given the condition of our roads this past year, I think it was a pretty hot topic that people wanted their roads improved. And 5 million of that plaza money could have gone to the roads. And quite frankly, I think that's as the NOHFC pointed out when they denied the funding, I think the downtown plaza is a replication of a lot of amenities that we have in the area. And I don't necessarily think that it's the best use of money at this time. Don't get me wrong, if we had a nice, beautiful plaza, no one's going to say no if money weren't an object and we weren't looking at spending money intended for the roads or for other, we have aging infrastructure. That's another issue that I want to discuss. So why are we building new when we still have stuff to take care of? And I used this analogy at the council meeting, and it kind of got twisted by some others at the same meeting. But if you're going to, let's say your foundation is cracked and you'd rather pave your driveway, right? That doesn't make sense. You're better off spending your money on your existing foundation and getting your house right before you start working on, putting lipstick on a pig or something along those lines. Absolutely. So are you talking about the gas tax fund, money that was typically used for infrastructure? Yeah. And when we say by infrastructure, I mean, I know that it was classified as this was an infrastructure need for the downtown plaza, which was a stretch. Yes, and I agree with that. Technically, it would fit the broad definition, but realistically and historically, it's been used for roads. And again, we'll just
side with you on that. Let's stop putting Band-Aids over top of an issue and fix those potholes that really did affect my 4 tires this year. So,
Absolutely.
It does. I'm thankful that, you looked into that. And I just wanted to bring that about, that you were very careful in where we were putting our money and our taxpayer money.
And I promise I will be, as long as I'm representing the taxpayers, right? Because it's important. And really quickly, I thought of this as you were saying. Ward 5 actually has a large amount, and by large I mean relative to the other wards, of gravel roads still. City-owned gravel roads. Money that we could use on those roads to bring them up to just even like a Class C asphalt, which isn't it's not fancy.
No,
but it's better than gravel. So it's
sure.
one of those things that it's really sad to see, because I know that I get calls from residents asking hey, we've been promised time and time again that we're going to get our road upgraded. When is that happening? And I continuously bring that up. And
I think when residents see their money put towards something at the end of the day, they said, okay, well, at least that's been fixed. That does help. That does give a positive thought in our minds. So what about asset management, or your asset management plans, and like our underground infrastructure and everything? I know that we've had an engineer move up, and you are talking about collecting your data, as we know needs to be done. Now that we've got all our asset management information and we've got our data plan, now you can bring that over and address these needs. So
absolutely.
Hopefully that will help out.
That asset management plan was a giant document. I was happy to see that work. That's important work. That to me is work. If we have crumbling infrastructure and we keep putting it off and putting it off and it's just going to get more expensive.
Absolutely.
And become a greater issue. So that's kind of where I see the money going. And it's not pretty. Nobody really gets to see or appreciate it, but it's one of those things where you notice if you're not paying into it.
Oh, absolutely.
More so than if you notice if you are.
Yeah, and it also helps you when you lobby towards the other levels of government, say, this is our aging infrastructure, and you have the data set in place. Absolutely. That you have all that information. Maybe the last time your bridge was going to be 25 years ago, your bridge conditioning and stuff. So the asset management plans are also very important, but it sounds like you're on top of that as well.
Yes.
Well, Matthew, that's all the time we have today. Is there anything else you'd like to end with before we have to end today?
The only thing I'd like to say is to anybody that's watching from Ward 5, get out and vote October 24th. You'll see me at the doors. I always like to make a promise that I'm going to get to every door. It's very hard in our ward. I'll try. I've got 2 young kids now, so they might be with me.
There you go.
But yeah, I'm going to make that promise to everybody. So the next 4 years, if I do get reelected, I'm going to try my best. I'm going to listen. I'll be the voice for Ward 5 again.
That's great. Well, congratulations on your last 4 years, and best of luck for your run again. And we'll be following your campaign.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all the time we have today for One-on-One with Colette Linden. We'll be back tomorrow.